Zachary Marlow is a maverick filmmaker, a renegade regen, and a co-founder of Moneyless Society, a platform aimed at catalyzing the shift away from money and towards a resource-based economy. Marlow is vagabonding around the world to tell a story of a more beautiful world beyond the pale of our current extractive economic system. In this podcast, expect to learn how money and capitalism can be seen as a religious ideology, worshiping at the feet of the god of Moloch, and leading to the coordination failure of humanity. How the narrative of progress should be critically examined and reevaluated as we transition from a pre-tragic to a post-tragic view of the world. How money is a symptom of an underlying paradigm that values self-interest and separation, and a new story is needed to shift towards a more regenerative and interconnected worldview. How love is a powerful force that can save us from the abyss and inspire us to take action to protect and restore the planet, and how savoring life and fully embracing the present moment is essential in the face of the world's challenges. This is Christian, and you found True North, a podcast that's equal parts sense-making, soul-searching, and storytelling. If you resonate with this project, please subscribe on your platform of choice, leave us 5 stars, and share it with a friend. It's the best zero-cost way to allocate your support, and it helps us bring valuable guests onto the show. Plus, as our subscribers grow in number, the kingdom of heaven will once again be restored to the earth, ushering in a golden age of lactose-free milk and vegan honey. So adorn your magic underwear and hit that righteous subscribe button, my fellow initiates, as we don the age of Aquarius. You can access all the relevant links at truenorthproject.com. Much love. Zach, do you go by Zach or Zachary?
Zachary or Marlow. Zach
Zachary
died
or
doing
Marlow.
a keg stand 10 years ago. He died flipping a Mini Cooper over a guardrail into a ravine, drunk out of his mind,
shit.
seeking God in all the wrong places.
Yeah, okay. That's a pretty intense rite of passage. Can be definitely transformative though, for sure. I don't know if you want to tell that story or not, just as like I wanted to get a little backdrop on you because we've kind of been adjacent, but I've never actually had a chance to talk to you. So I'm excited to kind of get a little bit of the background on what created this sort of maverick filmmaker that is running around the world, seeding Moneyless Society. So if you want to take it away.
That's a hard one to sort of pinpoint. I can't really point to one inciting incident. If we want to dip into the shadow work, though, the period of rambunctiousness and of failed seeking and developing an understanding of what any human being is capable of when they're unconscious, I think is really important. I was a drunk. Basically, I was a very sensitive child, and I was raised in a post-scarcity utopia called a happy childhood, and was kind of flung into the world of scarcity and hardship and stress and conflict and trauma and capitalism and all of those big words when I was around 21, and I was just woefully unprepared for it. And at first it was really, fun and freeing to be this, to find my voice, to find that I can speak things into being and that I have an effect on people, and that I'm able to get attention and bring people together. And then it pretty quickly started to spiral into darkness and into hard realizations and into a very unconscious process of being aware of how bad the world is and how much stress and pain there is around us. I mean, I was living in the poor areas of Atlanta, unwittingly participating in gentrification with a bunch of other college kids, sort of who thought they were the center of the universe. And I think we're all feeling dis-ease in the world. We're all feeling disorder and processing it in our own way. And I think many of the most sensitive people become addicts or nihilists, or they go through hard knocks because we live in a world that's not very kind to sensitive people, to creative people, to people who are concerned with beauty and imagination. And that was always my primary concern, and it still is. It's just shifted from escapism, trying to escape myself and my problems, escape this reality, escape this world, create a fantasy world to live in outside of reality. And it's shifted more into going through that hard road of realizing the problems and realizing like what any person is capable of when they're not conscious. To realize like that all of us are really like an expression of all the things we hate. We're all capable of anything, good or bad. And we're capable of making the world into a giant machine that's eating nature as fast as possible and pitting all human beings against each other to compete for money, for artificial scarcity. Or we could turn the world into a literal paradise, Garden of Eden, which is what it actually naturally is. That was kind of a meandering path through the story. But yeah, I crashed and burned through my 20s. I reached shamanic heights of extreme experience, just really understanding the poles of human experience, of pain and loss and tragedy and negativity, which is really important to understand and reckon with darkness, to not be disturbed by it, because many people today are afraid to look in to the issues. And as Marshall McLuhan said, the answer is inside the problem, not outside of it. So I think that period is in a way precious to me, that period of mistakes. Human beings, we learn by mistakes. And the problem right now is that we're not learning from our mistakes. I was kind of praying last night. I was kind of reckoning with like the spirit of money. I was doing this far out kind of invocation, prayer, ceremony sort of thing that some friends put me onto, that they discerned through AI and the dark web. They found this council of angels. Long story. But yeah, I was just kind of connecting with this spirit that I'd connected with years before, that really, it was like I was praying for money, I was praying for wealth and the money to make a film, because I was making a film years ago, because I'm always making a film. And I've struggled for years to be able to get them funded. And that prayer didn't give me money to make a film, but it unwittingly brought me into contact with what money really is, with the reality of what this thing that we live in, that we require for everything that we've made the center of our universe, is. That it is this collective hallucination that has, for better or worse, gotten us to this point. That it's gotten us through our terrible twos, through our hard drinking, wild youth, where we develop speed and aggression and the ability to walk up to the prettiest girl and just say, hey, what's up? We've been able to develop power and ego through this thing, and it's time to evolve it. That's what I was speaking to it. I was saying, I want to help you evolve. I'm not angry at you anymore. We are where we are. It's just time to evolve our understanding of accounting and value and how we manage our household, because what we have now is not cutting it.
Well said. Thanks for sharing the meandering, pandering story. It's interesting. I've got a lot of parallels in my own story as far as like the 20s go. The 20s were rocky, at least the first half for sure. And it actually was, I kind of opted out of college after a couple of years, so I could get started early on chasing money, because college is sort of just a training ground for that. But I found out that I had an opportunity to, so I finished my associate's degree, but I had an opportunity at like 21 to sort of start making good money doing mortgages, which is basically just another way that money is sort of abstracted into these kind of like financial instruments that we can kind of create industry and economy around and whatnot. And yeah, kind of just that became the purpose, that became the goal in and of itself, or the God that I was worshiping. And I don't know if we don't have to get too far into this at all, actually, but I came from a small society. I came from a little not a moneyless society, but a society of fundamentalist Mormons who were sort of, you know, we kind of had a different value set, you know. So it's like I came from a time where there were things that were higher on the pecking order than money, right? Like it was kind of a Mormon uh, theology, but still there was this sort of greater power and greater sense of belonging to something bigger, including your community. So, but then I kind of was disillusioned by all of that when I found out, you know, sort of the roots of Mormonism and sort of the backstory, and kind of had the veil pulled back to see that there was this kind of bigger reality that I'd been missing. So, you know, it's kind of this hardcore kind of rite of passage of my own, where I was sort of coming out of a cult and into a bigger world. And my way of sort of coping with that was trying to fit into that bigger world, which meant chasing money and things, possessions, status. You know, just sort of the regular kind of script that most people are running. And I did that for the first half of my 20s, and it wasn't until I had some encounters with uh, some substances, namely MDMA and lysergic acid, LSD, that I was able to
Old
have
friend.
these sort of like epiphanies that there was a deeper, more fundamental value set, like a base layer of value inside of me. And I started reorienting more towards authenticity and following my curiosity, and orienting more towards just health and self-discovery and transformation, which kind of led me on this journey. And it seems like you've been on a journey as well. So I think we got a lot of parallels there in the stories, the backstories. Normally I'm the one on the side of the fence that's sort of like talking shit on money and sort of the current systems. And I'm getting the sense that I'm probably going to have to play devil's advocate on the other side in this conversation, just to kind of hopefully tease out more and more of the logos if we can, because I think that there's a value in, you know, iron sharpens iron. And so I'm going to try to pressure test some of your ideas, hopefully.
Yes,
Yeah.
Simon's been doing that for fucking a year,
Oh,
and
nice. Yeah.
he's great at
Simon's,
it.
yeah, he's
He's
very
really good at it.
disagreeable. He's very disagreeable in that.
I forget when like I he'll get so into the character. I'll be like, "Are you serious? Are you fucking serious? Do you really think that?" And he's so stoic. He just so commits to it. It's great. But yeah, we've
Yeah.
had a great series of dialogues together. It's been really great learning and growing with him. And that's really how we grow, is we sort of find the points of friction and then we rub into those points, not necessarily just finding the points where we agree. I know so many people who share a lot of values with me. A lot of them are identified along, you know, some radical ideology or something, and they've just kind of planted their feet into where they think they are, instead of really continually pushing and pushing and pushing to go to that place where they don't have the answers. And the answer isn't just to say, oh, we need blankism. I want to say something though about the cult, leaving the cult. That really, like, what capitalism is a religion. I mean, it's a religion based around this thing that we call money. That is not an essential sort of fundament of society. It's not something that's been with humans forever. We have only used money in any form we could, you know, recognize as a token that we use to exchange resources for like 5,000 years. So that's less than 1% of human history, of our long arc of our own human journey. And yet we project it into this thing that is infinite. And I was talking to someone the other day and I was questioning it. And when you question this thing, it's like if you were to go home to your Mormon community and be like, God's not real, or maybe God isn't what we think it is. People would be like immediately extremely threatened and hostile, right? And so I got that response out of somebody who was like a total hippie. It was really weird. And he was like, money allowed us to do all this. Money created this world. And I was just like, did money create this world? Or did we? Did human beings? did creativity, did science and innovation and understanding stacked on top of itself in this progressive process where we're sharing ideas, where we're learning off of each other? Or was it a cycle of reactions that put us here? That so and so reacted to so and so, reacted to so and so. It's like we ascribe the creation of our world literally to money. Many of us do, and that's really what capitalism is. It's not an economic system. It isn't really about managing scarcity or meeting supply with demand, meeting demand with supply. It's not really about any of that stuff. It's really a high religious orthodoxy that worships this god, money, the market, which at this point is basically an AI, a very crude and primitive artificial intelligence, an algorithm that optimizes everything in our world based on what's good for it, not us. As you know, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just so to kind of riff on that, and let's run with this metaphor of money as God, or as sort of capitalism as religion. And just to, if that sounds crazy to people, just consider that everybody worships. In fact, humans, it's sort of one of the main qualities that separates us from the rest of the animal kingdom. And we're starting to find that like we might not be as special as we think in lots of ways, but we bury our dead. We set things apart as significant, right, and as sacred. And so that's something that's just a fundamental human quality. And whether you're doing it as part of a formal religion in sort of some sort of collective environment and context, like in a community or your church or what have you, whether you're doing that or you're unconsciously doing it, say at a football game with a bunch of other fans, or in a college dorm with a keg stand, or whatever the situation may be, like everybody worships, whether you're aware of it or not. There are certain say gods that you pedestalize or that you elevate above the sort of profane space, so that you have this kind of sacred space and this profane space. And when it comes to capitalism, I don't even know if that's the right term for what we're trying to describe here, but it seems like, I guess we'll just use that as a placeholder for now. But there's this sense that there's a like there's this force, there's this sort of magical thing that binds us all together, right? And so in terms of religion, that would be the temple or the church, right? And it's the symbol of maybe a cross, or the symbol of a steeple, the symbol of the axis mundi, the tallest point in the town, where we can all see the church from the center of the town, no matter where we're at in the town, because it's the tallest building. And it's the sort of thing that binds us all together, right? And I would argue that money is that now. Money is the thing that sort of binds humanity together, in this sense that it's the most sacred thing to most people. And I don't know about most people, but it's very, very sacred in the sense that because of its ability as an optionality token to maximize our optionality across any domain, right? Like we could take any resource or anything, asset of any kind of value, and it can be converted into this optionality token, which can then be, transferred or, sort of like exchanged across any of these other domains. So it's highly coveted, right? Because of that. And so to your point about, okay, so if we're worshiping, if this is a religion, then what would be the god of that religion? And I would make the case that the god is Moloch, which is basically to say that if you were to say like, okay, if we have endless, boundless human creativity, which I would say is true, if we have, all the resources that we need for everyone to thrive on the planet, right? The earth is quite abundant, and I think that's pretty obvious. So if we have all the resource and all of the abundance required, and we have all the ingenuity and creativity, then why isn't the earth, or why isn't our civilization thriving in the sense that every single person is healthy and or at least has drinking water, right? And at least has food, right? Like the basic fundamental stuff. Like why do we have this coordination failure? And I would say that the reason for that coordination failure, if we were to anthropomorphize it and give it a name, it would be Moloch. And that would be the sort of god of the human coordination failure, and also the god of capitalism, the god that we're all worshiping when we're cogs in the sort of machine that's eating the planet, as you say. So what are your thoughts on, I mean, does Moloch sound familiar to you? Are you familiar with that meme?
Oh yeah, we're very familiar with Moloch. Simon and I have been programming him into the ecosystem council, and I was really pushing Simon to be like, you gotta make him a little shit, because Simon was like, oh, he's reformed now, and I was like, no, you have to make him an unfettered asshole. I like the Moloch framework. I think the better god though is Mammon. There's a fantastic book by Eugene McCarraher called Enchantments of Mammon. It's a big thick ass book, like a biblical tome, and it's a history of basically of money and capitalism and markets as this god, and it views it as this thing that has basically desacralized the world and paradoxically, sort of contradictorily, become the god that we worship. And there's quote after quote in that book of like industrialists and people like Henry Ford and all of these politicians and people in power speaking about the market, speaking about capitalism as this god. And people like Ludwig von Mises and a lot of the Chicago School of Economics, they really speak about it like this uncontrollable force that should not be in our control, that it should control us, that the invisible hand of the market, I mean, that's the spark of this religion, Adam Smith being the first prophet of capitalism, prognosticated this invisible hand. And Adam Smith would abhor what he sees in the world today, that his creation went so amok that he extolled, he really excoriated rent seeking. And our system now, it has actually moved beyond pure capitalism. Well, it was never pure capitalism, as Noam Chomsky says. Pure capitalism would destroy the world in 5 minutes. But yeah, we are in this phase of techno-feudalism where it's all about rent seeking, where the United States form of capitalism isn't about making stuff, which was what Adam Smith was all about. It was about creation and being a creating things, making crafts, and having craft in what you do, which are, respectable values. But American capitalism, as Michael Hudson really elaborates, is all about finance capital, like mortgages, like creating financial instruments. That's what we create. We export debt to the world. That is our greatest export, debt and dead bodies. Whereas China's form of capitalism, because they're not socialists, they're a capitalist system that is focused on endless growth of money to turn money into more money. They just have a different sort of coordination mechanism around that. They are more about actually making stuff, which is what America was through the 20th century. But there was a shift, and I think a lot of that is because those extreme religious zealots, who were kind of like the Mormons to the Christian old school capitalists, kind of hijacked things with the neoliberal transformation. And all through basically around the 80s with Thatcher and Reagan, it was just complete unfettered capitalism and unfettered free markets trickle down. And that religious ideology took over the world really quickly and escalated our degeneration. But yeah, on the subject of the coordination failure, I think it's in a way, it is a tremendous failure to coordinate. And I think we have a failure to coordinate as people trying to organize and build something better. That's our struggle. But capitalism is extremely coordinated at what it's doing. I saw a video just today of bulldozers with a new mechanism, a really brilliant new mechanism of heavy chains between two bulldozers, and they just go through an entire forest and they take out an entire forest in a day. That is a marvel of coordination for a very stupid goal. So it's a very organized system. I mean, and people are organized. It's not like capitalism itself is efficient, because it's monsterly inefficient, because 80% of the world lives on less than $10 a day. Most people don't have clean water. We have a monstrous overproduction of things that don't matter, of things that are useless, things that just make money, or things that nobody even really wants. We produce an entire production line of products that nobody asked for, because it's like this whole process of the whole narrative is it's supply and demand, but it's reality, as the plutonomy memo that Citibank came out with years ago, a chilling memo where their internal reports determined what the economy is and how it really works, and that actually we don't live in a democracy, we live in a plutonomy where rich people who have money, dictate what happens. And so this narrative that we create the world through our consumer choices, that we vote with our dollars, and if we want to solve climate change, we just need to consume different, which a lot of activists think it's really silly. That is false. That the economy is a command economy that is controlled from the top down, and it's actually an instance of like the corporation perfected like Stalinist central planning. It's a great book called People's Republic of Walmart about this, that we don't really live in a market society anymore. We don't live in anything like anything that people in these old times that concocted these religions would recognize. And the technology that it has produced, that we have produced through it, with it, whatever, has outmoded it and has brought us to a reckoning with the need to radically evolve and to actually utilize the tools that we have at our disposal to do what they were supposed to do, which is to meet needs and to help us coordinate.
Okay, so I'm going to take a slight pivot, and I'm going to take on the persona of like, say, more of like a Pinker-esque perspective, right? So
Love
like,
it.
yeah, let's say for anyone who's listening who's like, the fuck are these guys talking about? I'm looking around at the world, things are better than they've ever been, in the sense that there's less violence, there's more abundance, there's more wealth, there's more, we've got like ubiquitous technology, everyone's got refrigeration, everyone's got all these appliances and conveniences. I mean, I live in Las Vegas, where I can get virtually anything in 2 hours via Jeff Bezos. You know what I mean? So it's like I can have insane convenience and luxury. I've virtually no risk of like a serious disease taking me out. Like, it's not no risk, but it's very, very small because of modern medicine. I've got endlessly. You could just go down the list of all these dope perks, so to speak, of modernity. And that's in large part been a side effect or a byproduct of the free market and the invisible hand giving people an incentive to innovate, and to give rise to all of the benefits that we look around at today. And so we're actually on this path of progress. And actually, you want to go back to some forgotten age or some bygone era where we were just dying at 34 years of age on average, and things were nasty, brutish, and short. And why would you want to go back to that time? We've been on this, like, we sort of clawed our way out of the Stone Age, out of this sort of horrific, prehistory. And so the story of money is actually a story of humans becoming incrementally better at, at like you said, coordinating, but also just innovation and its expression of it's like liquid creativity. It fuels human innovation. So what would you say to that?
You just given me like a Thanksgiving roast. I'm like, where do I cut in? Do I go for the dark meat? Do I go for the light meat? I'm like buzzing, getting the electric cutter that capitalism delivered us in the 1950s to roast into this symbol of abundance, the symbol of the theft of America from its indigenous peoples. Anyway, yeah. Where to begin with this? I just finished an amazing little short film, a little segment from the larger film, to be with the very great Thomas Pogge, who is an expert in global justice. He's a professor at about 5 different universities. He's head of global justice programs left and right. And we met in New York City and filmed him expertly dismantling that narrative, that central lie that poverty is going down. And he said, in a purely material sense, for certain people, for some people, for a very small number of people, things are improving. But he said, in terms of moral quality of life, things have never been worse than in all of human history. And by that, he means because we have more technology, we have more means to end poverty, we have the resources, unquestionably. to end all of these problems. I mean, shifting just literally mere pennies per person on the earth could save millions of lives. You know, shifting 1% of global GDP could save literally like 18 million people every single year who die from poverty and basic deprivation, a lack of money, of this thing that we've created, this abstraction. And that's a low number. That's a hard estimate that really serious social scientists who are tallying the death statistics all over the world, the excess death statistics, the people who are dying prematurely, dying of diarrheal diseases, dying of medieval illnesses that we have cured, you know, literally centuries ago, dying from a lack of clean water, dying from the exposure to the elements, from heat, from cold, from a lack of food, incredibly preventably, easily preventably. And that's greater than any violence done by any state. That's more than the death toll of all wars combined, is just the amount of people who die because they don't have enough of this abstraction that we've created, money. That's number one. Things are not improving for the majority of the planet, and they're in fact going down. And the number of people living on less than $2.15 a day, which is the poverty line set by the IMF and the World Bank, may be incrementally going down. And that's just because of inflation, basically. But it doesn't mean that people are actually able to afford the things they need, namely basic foodstuffs, namely housing, namely clean water. And technology may be more affordable and cheaper because it's subsidized and because of tons of government-funded or state-funded, public-funded universities who are generating the lion's share of the innovation that is then captured by private corporations to sell back to us. Or in the instances of like the big tech companies like Amazon and Facebook and Musk, all of these big tech companies, that these Goliaths, these megalithic enterprises, these centrally planned, basically Stalinist totalitarian command economies that are larger than many countries. The GDP of Apple's market cap is higher than the GDP of Russia. Like, what the fuck? One of the biggest countries in the world. So these enormous entities were created in large part by just enormous infusions of free money straight from the banks. In the 2008 crash, the banks were giving money away. They were literally paying people to take money from them with negative interest rates. And none of the people could afford things. No one was starting businesses. This money did not make it to the working person. They literally paid they paid the very same people who wrecked the economy with their gambling over mortgages and the housing market. They gave them money to go out and buy up all the houses that all the poor people and the middle class that was slashed down lost in the crash. And that's the crisis. We did a great little interview with Richard Wolff about the cyclical breakdowns, the boom bust cycle in capitalism that cyclically explodes every 5 to 7 years, as it has everywhere that it's ever been set up. It blows up every 5 to 7 years, which is a feature, not a bug, because it's like that dude, that fake populist Robert Kiyosaki said in an interview. He's like, "Oh, what's wrong with crashes? Crashes are great. Crashes are like Neiman Marcus having a sale." So the system deconstructs because it's based on gambling and speculative bubbles and taking money that the government just fucking creates. That sovereign currency issuers they just shoot that money out and they give it to the richest people. And those rich people invest in speculative assets and financial instruments and derivatives. Like, there's trillions of dollars of derivatives. There's more derivatives than there are anything else. There's more derivatives than stars in the sky, which are just purely inflated, abstract, gambles placed on gambles placed on gambles. That's really the structure of the economy. And I'm kind of getting lost on a tangent here. We have more to debunk. But yeah, basically this whole illusion that the free market did this is just silly. There's no such thing as a free market. It's the whole thing is propped up by the state, has always been. And it's not state versus, market. It's market state. It's one entity. They may have a contestuous relationship, like a boomer couple in Vegas who argues the whole trip, but they're still completely codependently enmeshed with each other, and they were created by each other. There's this idea that the money emerged through people trading with each other, and oh, I can't carry my goat to the next town to trade, things that nobody was trading back then, because barter is a fiction created by people like Adam Smith. And anthropologists have roundly debunked this, that people were not managing their economic lives by trading cows for chickens. They had much more complicated social relationships of basically a kind of indebtedness that isn't like I owe you until I own you, but it's like I'm your neighbor. Okay, I'm going to help you and trust that you're going to get me back because we live with each other. We're interdependent. We're interconnected. We need each other. Eventually, you're going to get me back. So it's kind of good for me to do something for you and you not immediately get me back. Whereas this thing, money, it X's that out. It says, I don't trust you. You don't trust me. We're strangers and we're competing. And so, yeah, you mentioned, real quick, one more. You mentioned prehistory there. And there's this notion that, like, prehistory was brutish and nasty. And, we can look at indigenous peoples today as a great example of like how bullshit that is. I was very lucky to spend the last 6 months or just spend 6 months in Colombia. That's where I met Simon. That's how I met you. Living and seeking and questing with indigenous peoples. And they absolutely blow out of the water many of the quality of life and just general experiences of life that many people even in rich places have. They're more fulfilled, they're happy, they're full, they have incredible social capital in their societies, they have love and trust for each other, they're looking each other in the eye when they're speaking, they are incredibly intelligent and wise. And this isn't just some like fetish of like, oh, the noble savage. But funny thing about the noble savage is that term came around because Europeans experiencing indigenous peoples living in this basically post-scarcity sort of organic society saw that there wasn't like the lord who rides around on a horse and goes hunting, and then the serfs who like work the earth and monocrop in a really stupid, inefficient way. Everybody in that society was hunting and was living like a noble. So everyone in the native society was living like a noble. And David Graeber's book, The Dawn of Everything, is an amazing document of this, that there's just story after story of like just debunking our silly understanding of human history, that our human story is much more interesting, much more varied and diverse, and much more rich and abundant than we like to think.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Dawn of Everything. I was going to mention it, and it sounds like you've read it, so that's awesome. I really enjoyed it, and just to elaborate a little bit on that point, he's kind of pointing to this era, this Rousseauian era during the sort of colonial age of conquering and conquest and migration over to North and South America, right, from Europe, traversing over to the Americas. And we were sort of, it really does come back to Rousseau in lots of ways, but we were sort of creating these narratives that were, in some sense, justifications of our colonialization. And there's without getting too deep into that book, basically he's just showing that it's not black or white, as we're either in these sort of stiff hierarchical structures of, say, civilization, or we're either in these flat egalitarian hunter-gatherer tribes. That sort of false dichotomy isn't the case. It's more like humans have a lot of social plasticity, and we have the ability to sort of coordinate in many different fashions, and including going from the band tribe level all the way up to gatherings of say, like for the Buffalo Run, gatherings of thousands of individuals, in some sort of like very clear hierarchical organization state, which has a police force so that it can stay coordinated and organized and things like that. And then it disbands seasonally. As the Buffalo Run ends, it can disband back to bands and tribes. And so, to your point though, so like, I want to start to segue into you started to mention more of the story of interbeing and interconnectedness and interrelationship. And I just wanted to point to the fact that, as difficult as it is for me to sort of like straight-faced put on the Steven Pinker narrative, I know you enjoyed.
You did a great job. I did enjoy that.
I do think it's valuable to sort of consider, these arguments and not just sweep them aside. And when I first, got out of mortgages and I started my sort of journey I alluded to before, I started True North Project as a blog, and my very first post, my very first like inquiry into what's going on and stuff, was actually about Steven Pinker's book. I think Enlightenment Now is what it's called, and my whole narrative in that post was life is fucking good. Like things are great. Like they haven't been better and everything's like, awesome. And it was basically sort of the last sort of glimpse of my pre-tragic self. So I'm glad I have a digital artifact of that I can kind of go back to and look at, because it's like a time capsule of my state of consciousness in 2018. But Zach Stein and others have kind of framed this really, I think this really valuable frame of pre-tragic, tragic, and post-tragic. And basically that is to say that, you can exist in this narrative that's sort of insulated from the realities of, like you said, the tragedies of the world, and sort of meeting the, you haven't quite met the wound of the world yet, right? And then when you wake up to that, it's like waking up with a whimper, and being in the tragic, and you see a lot of that nowadays, more and more so, I would say. I think we're sort of in this wave of transition between, people in the pre-tragic who have just kind of been keeping the blinders on, and there's still plenty of that, obviously, but more and more, especially young people, are coming into this tragic frame where they're realizing everything's fucked, and they're like, wait, this is actually not a rosy story, especially if I'm a young person and I'm supposed to be the generation that inherits the earth, and I'm getting told that, by 2050, climate change will be, wrecking our civilization. There'll be refugees everywhere, and I'm reading that there will be no fertility, and that everyone will be basically sterile by then because of all of the environmental toxins that are wrecking our fertility rates, and all these other, various things. We could talk about existential risk of AI, et cetera. And there's basically like this poly crisis or meta crisis thing that's going on. And the more that you like brace yourself for that and you open your eyes more to that, the more it just floods in and you're like, oh my God, it's everywhere. And so it's like once you're choosing to see it, then you start to really see it. And I would just say that I think that's part of the, caterpillar breaking free into the butterfly. It's like part of, that pain. Like Khalil Gibran said it best. He said, your pain is the breaking of the shell that encloses your understanding. So it's like, yes, we have this pain, and yes, we're going through this really painful awakening, but it's part of breaking out of that shell, right? And if you, at some point, you have to, like, if you're using the metaphor of, say, like a mammal, a chicken, whatever, any organism growing in an egg, once it hits that limits to growth, right? Because if you look at from, like, if you were to plot and map on a graph the growth rate of that organism versus the size of its finite environment, you'd say, oh, this is unsustainable. This is collapse. This thing's going to die, right? It's not going to work out. Tough luck, right? It's basically exhausting its environment, and it's converting all of its energy to shit, and eventually it's going to die. But what happens instead is a miracle, and it hatches, and its world transforms, and it's born into a new world. And the same is true of a human birth, right? Like, if it's either, there's this sort of moment where it's like birth or die, right? It's like be born or die, like that. Those are the choices. And there's this miracle of life where it comes forth despite all the odds. And so I would say that this frame of tragic to post-tragic is very much, I think they're very analogous. Like, you can spiral out down into nihilism and into despair and into eventually suicide, or just total disconnect.
Been there, done that.
What's that?
Said been there, done that.
Right. And more have, and I have as well. I mean, I've been in the shit as far as like the hopelessness, meaninglessness, and the nihilism, and I've plumbed those depths. Luckily, I've, for whatever reason, support of, I mean, I don't even know exactly what it is other than grace that's sort of given me the experiences and the scaffolding that I needed to eventually be able to pick myself up, or to transition beyond just the tragic and start to move into post-tragic, which is the reason I bring this frame, is because post-tragic is where we all need to go, right? Like, you don't want to resort back to the pre-tragic in order to get out of the tragic, to get away from the shit. So there's a lot of that happening right now with Trumpism and all these different basically promises back to some bygone era where things are going to be great again, right? And we're just gonna like revert back to how it was. And there's really, that's an illusion. Like, that's not even possible. Like, a chicken can't climb back into its egg, right? Like, it's going through that. Once your reality breaks open, it's open. Once you leave the cave in Plato's allegory, once you see the light, you can't unsee the light. And in fact, now you'll never see the shadows on the wall the same ever again. So there's this sort of red pill dynamic where you can't go back. There's no going back. There's only forward. And that's where I would invite anyone listening and brothers and sisters into the post tragic, which is to say that, like, yeah, there is a meta crisis. There is a lot of existential risk. There is a lot of inequality. There is a lot of fucking plastic in the ocean. There is a bunch of bummers. Like, everywhere you look, if you pay attention sufficiently, you find a bummer. And if you pay attention sufficiently, you find beauty. And it's really up to you what you focus on and what you pay attention to and what you see. And I kind of see the post tragic as an invitation into walking the beauty way, which is to say that, like, you can choose to recognize the beauty in life. You can choose to add to the beauty of life, and you can choose to increase your capacity to do both of those things. So those are just like, that's up to you. Do you want to walk in beauty, see more of that, add more to it, and bring your unique sort of contribution to the beauty of the world? And so that's like where I think we should go next is, we've been talking about money, and the thing is, money is an easy thing for people to sort of understand as sort of a catch-all phrase. But I would also make the case that money, like you said, it's not even an ancient technology. I guess it's ancient in terms of a few thousand years, but I would argue that this story, this separation, this fundamental disease, this orientation that's leading to the tragedy of the commons and the race to the bottom that we're in. In other words, worshiping at the altar of Moloch, that has been happening, I would say, even separate from money, but money has accelerated it, right? So I wouldn't say that money is actually the root cause. It's more of a symptom of an underlying paradigm or story. And, Eisenstein calls that the story of separation, which is to say that, like, there's such a thing as a separate me that kind of exists in my own little universe, right? And it's in my best interest to sort of just like maximize my own self-interest. And, you could see this in terms of like a civilization that's figured out agriculture and a surplus of food and division of labor and a military force, eradicating all the hunter-gatherers around them, right? And taking their land and then subjugating that land to the civilization or to the machine. So I think that's been going on for a long time. Money is a technology that really ramps it up and accelerates the process. And now we're seeing that accelerated exponentially with like the rise of AI. It's just basically going to, if what we're doing is we're optimizing our narrow metrics that our civilization's currently optimizing, if we continue to exponentially optimize that with artificial intelligence and our technology, that's an existential self-terminating situation, right? And that seems to be what we're doing. Like, we're in this arms race where we're just rolling out AI as fast as possible, and it's basically just accelerating the thing that we're already doing, and we're just extracting value from both the earth, the ecosystems, right? And turning them we're building the desert, we're building the wasteland, but not just in terms of the environment. If you think about it from the terms of human capital, or our well-being, our vitality, our fertility, our attention, our health, that's being extracted as well, right? And just like how an algorithm can extract your attention on TikTok, we can also use, just basically think about the exponential shift now that we're talking about, the technology of LLMs and what's rolling out now, and how that is essentially, if it's serving the same God, if it's serving the same master, and it's pointed at you in an extractive way, that's pretty existential. That's pretty grim. And that's just to say nothing of the fact that there are other actors, that there's other nation states, that it's a multipolar world where we really are in an arms race. And we have to orient towards a different story. We have to find a new base layer level of value that sort of creates that common denominator of like humanity, right? And life, planet Earth. So that's kind of where I'm interested in exploring, and I'm curious what you've rolled with the indigenous. You've been around the world. You've been kind of this maverick filmmaker, following your curiosity and curious about your journey. But I'm curious what you found in terms of like how do you see the solution? Because obviously, tearing down the castle isn't necessarily the answer. We have to I think create something that's inherently more valuable, inherently more attractive, that people will opt into, not just out of desperation because this current system is broken down. We have to actually like have a regenerative story that people feel hopeful for.
I want to backtrack a little bit. And you were saying, what is it that saves us from the abyss, from really looking into it, from really taking it all in? And the only answer I think that makes sense is love. It's love that saves us. There's a song by Sturgill Simpson called Turtles All the Way Down. And he's like, marijuana, LSD, psilocybin, DMT changed my mind, but love's the only thing that's ever saved my life. And there's just some kind of miracle that keeps us holding on in the midst of that, in the face of it. But there's also a healing salve, almost an anti-venom in that I never felt happy in this society. I never felt happy in the world of ecocide and total immolation, destruction, and alienation and success. I saw success tear my own family apart. I saw things get worse when we got richer, And so for someone like me who was alienated from that society, it wasn't bad news exactly to say, to see, to really understand, oh, it's fucked. Like this thing is going to destroy itself and it's going to destroy us. That's a lot of people cling to that. They cling to it because they're identified with it, because it has distanced them and disconnected them from their true self, from each other, from life, from community, from nature, from anything beyond the individual, which is a doomed organism. An individual, drop that into the environment and nature and it's useless. It's going to die. But the answer to the other side of that is that these bad things, these horrible reckonings, push us into a conclusion that by studying the problems and really understanding, okay, it's not a million different problems. It's one interconnected system that is rooted in a very particular game mechanic that, as you said, didn't just begin in money. Money is not the root of all evil, but it's the square root of evil. It's an exponential function that's been added to this root socioeconomic inequality, this controlling resources to control other people and using basically domination to create these feedback loops that you have to dominate more. And it really, it's a form of trauma. It's an inability to trust that necessitates continually fortifying yourself and going out there and fucking other people, because if you don't fuck them, they're going to fuck you.
So wouldn't,
and that's kind of the,
yeah, sorry to interrupt, but like that's I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying, but it sounds to me like money is just a layer above that, that's sort of exacerbating that or exponentializing it in some sense. Like it's an exponent magnifying it, but at the base of the root of this, it seems to me, is just a messy human problem.
well, I'll take it a step further though, because it is more than that. It isn't just one thing. It is something that has, as we've established earlier, or as we're building toward, has become a god, has become something that is out of our control, that we serve. We serve money. The Arwacos clip point said this simply. They said, money doesn't have the same owner as us. We don't own it. It owns us. And so most of what we are doing in this world, most of where our human potential is going, is to turn money into more money, not to meet our needs, not to preserve life, not to grow life, not for genuine innovation, for social function and necessity. It is to make money. The majority of jobs are bullshit jobs. They're not necessary for the life function of humanity, yet we do them because we have to make money so that we can buy more products, because we have to increase the amount of money that every entity is making. And that is rooted in the basic foundation of compound interest, that there's more debt than money. Eisenstein points this out well. It's a game of musical chairs, that there has to be a loser. And so to switch into the solutions of this, to really understand this problem, so understand that it's not just this immeasurably complex thing, that this is just one element of, that this thing is really like an algorithm that's driving all these problems. All of these problems are profitable. It is profitable to maintain them. It is profitable to extract value out of a problem more so than it is to solve the problem. If we ended hunger, we would also end the food industry. We would end industry as we know it. Thorstein Veblen talked about this in the 30s, that there's industry, which is the actual productive capacity for us to solve problems, to make machines, to produce what we need. And then there's business, which seeks to get in between humanity and the progress that industry is capable of. Our industry, our capacity is unbelievable today. We could do so much, but we don't, because solving these problems is not only bad for business, it's the end of business as we know it. It's not the end of human beings getting together in groups and organizing themselves to solve problems. And we're very much about the cooperative transformation, the transition out of the existing sort of business. Like, we can't just snap our fingers and jump into the next world, but we can structure our organizations and enterprises as worker-owned, integral, holistic organisms that are responsive to feedback, that don't place us in this me above you hierarchy, where we are no longer responsive to each other, where the mere fact of putting somebody into that structure affects their brain on a neurological level, where they eventually stop neuronally mirroring, and then on a sociological level, where there's all this stress and alienation and distrust and just a bad structure. But to switch into, like, what's the good thing? What's on the other side of that? Is, as the meta crisis is a synergistic collision of many different feedback loops forming greater feedback loops, the answer is to form a system, and for us to take all of the little issues that we're focusing on, or all of the solutions, and to synergistically stack them into something that is reinforcing itself as a system, something that's greater than the sum of its parts. And many people out there have answers. There are more answers than there are problems, because the problems we're experiencing are imminently solvable and are, I would say, even 100 years back, are artificially maintained by the existing economic system. And when we solve those problems, we will open up new vistas of problem solving. Not, oh fuck, no one has food. Not, oh shit, like, we don't have clean drinking water, because these are technically easily solvable problems. We could literally rearrange like percentage points of the global product to end these problems. And then we would free humanity to join the process, the quest, the community, this big group project, this cleanup party, to solve problems and to direct resources where they're needed, so that people have what they need to innovate and basically obsolete work into a new form of play, where we're really just exploring and following our curiosity. And I live in this. I haven't been paid for what I've been doing in 10 years, and I'm extremely motivated, like a burning race car, driving forward, continually pulled forward into this quest, this brilliant light. And I see again and again, everywhere that I go, pieces of the world that could be, pieces of community, of this revivification of what it is to be human, to be with each other, to laugh and dance and sing as a revolutionary process. Not in this form of revolution of, we're going to tear the system down. It's doing that. It's doing that better than we ever could. But it's this process of organizing ourselves into collective, collaborative, shared units with democratic governance and good organizational systems. It's not total chaos. Anarchy is organization, organization, organization. That's what Malatesta said. We can have an anarchic system that is extremely well organized, that is more responsive to feedback, that allows us to create these fractally self-organizing, autonomous little bubbles, little Dunbar number, units that coalesce on bigger projects to follow the buffalo or run with the buffalo, whatever that example was. And we can coordinate at mass scales without losing the autonomy of knowing your neighbor and of being able to control your own destiny. And to create cooperative enterprises, to create this inter-cooperative system where we're not a bunch of different discrete entities competing with each other for a scarce amount of resources, we're able to create nodes in a network, going from the market, which is this crazy system where everybody's throwing wads of cash down on, tables with fish, and we're trying to convert everything into everything. That was something you said earlier I wanted to really catch, and that's something Schmachtenberger said in that great Norskin mic drop interview where he's like, this infinitely fungible, transferable, unifying value system where we're trading everything for everything else, and an hour of my time is transferable into a cat, which is transferable into a sack of potatoes, which is transferable into a nuclear warhead, is a crazy way of thinking. And if you pitch that to our ancestors, they would be like, you're fucking insane. Please leave. Like, we don't need to transfer everything into everything. That's silly, unless we're talking about energy. Unless we're getting actually thermodynamic about it and understanding that everything is energy on some level, and we begin to create new accounting systems to account for the energy.
Well, I think the key,
and energy could be food, calories, labor, all of these different things, to create a new economic system to manage resources, to get energy where it needs to go, and to create a true circulation, not an accumulation, not this sort of really toxic. One more little point here. The profit motive itself is extractive. And if we're in a network together, which people are going to say markets are networks, but they have a fundamentally different sort of arrangement, where it's like in a permacultural setup, you want all the water to stay in your system. You want it to flow between. You don't want one plant to absorb a tremendous amount of that water. You don't want there to be an energy loss at every single interchange. And especially not a system where there's this volcano model. It's not just a pyramid, it's a volcano where the energy is being blasted up into the shareholders. We want to circulate energy throughout all society in a system that is more synaptic, that has better feedback, that is more able to solve problems and adapt and free us, that is more fun, more beautiful. We can talk more about how that would be structured, but
yeah,
I'll let you jump in there.
Yeah, well, great riff. I think that to your point about Schmachtenberger, I think the key insight there is that there's a qualitative quality, right? There's an actual quality to everything, to every being, to every. So the quality of the cat is different than the quality of the nuclear warhead. And even though we could say a cat is worth 0.000001 nuclear warheads or whatever, right? Because they could both be measured by monetary, like they could both be measured quantitatively, right? So you can't confuse the quantitative with the qualitative, in other words. And by running this code where everything can be reduced down to some sort of metric, to some narrow metric called optionality token, resource placeholder, et cetera, money, then you lose the qualitative component of everything. And this is why, you can have more money in a society and have less quality of life. Like you can be time poor, right? Because you've converted your time for money. And there's actually more scarcity in that. Like you're pointing to these, the Kogi and the Arawakas and these hunter-gatherers who are actually very wealthy in many ways that we aren't, and we can't even pay for, right? Like even if you're a billionaire, you can't pay for the ecology of social relationships and communitas that comes with a hunter-gatherer level society that's rooted in the same story of value and that's been through the same rites of passage and has picked each other up and supported each other and actually given their blood for each other. Like that's something that's priceless. It's a qualitative thing. It's not a quantitative thing. You can't measure it in dollars. And so like there's a fundamental rift here and a divide. And so it's like if we were to continuously just optimize for the qualitative thing, whether it's thermodynamically and converting everything into its energy value, or whether it's money as the metric or whatever it is, Or compute is another big one. Like how much fucking compute can we get out of this thing, right? Computonium, basically. Like all of those narrow metrics are going to miss the point. And there's really, this idea that a lot of techno utopians have that we'll just have an AI that's sufficiently advanced enough to measure everything, and then we'll be fine. It's like that's actually an acceleration of the same fucking problem, and it's actually going to just accelerate the catastrophe, right? And so I kind of see that is happening, and this is the bummer side, right? Like you kind of have to hold both of this paradox of like this is going to be gnarly. This seems like a train is running full steam ahead, and the tracks end, and there's a cliff, and there's no brakes, and there's no really way of stopping it. Like what's going to stop BlackRock from accumulating more assets? You know what I mean? What's going to stop the US from printing more dollars? What's going to stop China from manufacturing more stuff and putting more plastic in the ocean? Nothing's going to, like, I don't see any force that can stop it other than it has to just maybe like hit the wall, like whatever that looks like. And hopefully, I mean, I wish there was a way to stop it. I love like the naive side of me, the optimistic side of me is like, maybe if we just have more conversations like this and we, somehow like create a good social cultural container for something like maybe psychedelics and transformational initiatory practices, we can kind of bring more and more people into this new story and sort of shift consciousness, and create a wave of transformational culture. And I think that that's happening too. But I don't think that it stops the AI arms race. Like, I mean, I don't know. Maybe there's some sort of like grace here where it kind of gonna get it at the Hail Mary at the end of the fourth quarter. But more so likely to me is like both are going to play out simultaneously, and we're going to see this sort of collapse while we're seeing the sort of regeneration play out. And that there's this kind of beautiful metaphor of the forest, right? Of nature, like biomimicry is like the composters, and they just kind of take the old dead stuff and they turn it back into energy for the forest for new life to grow. And so I kind of think of that as the sort of the jam of the regeneration, or this idea of like we need a regenerative wave of culture that can take the sort of trash of the modern age of in the industrial revolution and the digital age and all that stuff. And when I say trash, I don't mean just physical trash on the ground. I'm talking about the trash in our fucking brains, right? Like the lack of attention span and the extraction of our health and vitality and fertility. Like we're inheriting that as well, So we have to figure out how to take the inheritance of like this mess, which comes with the upside, right? Like it's not all bad. Like modernity has provided a lot of. I mean, we have mastery over causal process, as Forrest Landry would say. Like we're shooting rockets into space, and we're doing all kinds of wild shit. So it's like if we could figure out how to take that godlike technology and power and steward it with something like godlike wisdom of the gods, then we could sort of evolve into some other type of humanity and some sort of protopian, more beautiful world. But yeah, man, it's this weird paradoxical thing where I find myself well, there's a great quote that embodies it. I wake up and I'm conflicted. Do I save the world or savor it? Right? And logic would suggest that I have to savor it, because if if it's worth saving, then it's savorable, right? Like in other words, like if the world is beautiful and it's worth saving, then we should fucking savor it. You know what I mean? And it's like in the savoring actually stimulates more of that, like, oh, I need to actually do something to protect this. And also the energy of getting out of the savior mindset, right? Of the I got to fix the world's problems, and instead just getting into the like I want to fucking walk in beauty and flourish and thrive. Like that savoring mindset actually is what we need to save the world in some sense.
I'm gonna counter that, because I want to say I have the opposite view, but it's kind of like a secret third thing. That is to throw yourself completely and utterly, wildly into the crisis, into the hurricane, into the unknown, into the adventure of saving the fucking world. Because, when we were kids and they were in the backyard, were we imagining that we were going to walk through a field of wheat and run our fingers through it and eat a sandwich and be like, that's good? We were like, no, we're going to save the world from demons and monsters. We're going to do some shit with our life. We're going to raise a sword against evil and strike it down and win. And that that is the childlike imagination that I never lost, that I went down swinging, refusing to yield in society, to say, I'm going to accept the compromise of this dead world, this world that is a dead culture that just gives me a few things that I can enjoy, like, creature comforts on top of it. And you know what? The strangest thing happened when I really completely died away. And I hit rock bottom. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing with the AI arms race and the stampeding train. We're going to hit the wall. They are going to hit the wall. Many of us are hitting the wall. Many people hit the wall through COVID, and you need to do that in a dark, twisted way to learn from your mistakes, to really recognize your mistakes. And they don't recognize their mistakes. The pinkers of the world have done a really good job making people in power think things are great. All those people complaining, they're just bitches. They're just little snowflakes, But so to throw yourself into it, I mean, I can really take my own experience. That's kind of all I have to go on in a way, but it's not, because I've traveled way beyond myself and found so many other people on this ride that I fell out the bottom of society, suicide attempt, mental hospital, complete destruction of all my social relationships, complete everything just in flames. And I came out the other side realizing all I ever really wanted to do was adventure and quest and explore. And so I started to travel. I didn't let money get in the way of that. I said, okay, I want to hitchhike. I want to travel. I want to see the world. I'm going to couch surf. I'm going to find people. I'm going to find the social skills to figure out how to meet my needs. And I did. And the most amazing thing happened, a miracle. I threw myself into that, and not one day went by where all of my needs were not met. I met all my needs just through other people, through this sort of resonance of like this vibration in the heart, magnetically bringing me right where I need to go, to the right people, to the resources that I need, and ultimately into a greater sense of who I am and a quest and a purpose to take action. And I've thrown myself into the save the world thing fully, 100%, without any hesitation, without any clinging, grasping to the comforts and all the things that were never comfortable to me anyway. And the miracle is that I've been given everything else, is that I've lived basically without any secure income. Like, I still use money. I'm not against it. If any of you wants to support me on Ko-Fi or Patreon, or send me a direct donation to PayPal or whatever to help me keep going, if you believe in this mission and blah, 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 do it. Great. It'll help me. But it's never stopped me. And I've been able to travel this world, to go on incredible adventures, to taste the fruits of this world, to live better than a fucking billionaire, because I'm partying in the favela and I'm on the rooftop garden, looking at the waves. And I'm right now I'm in Topanga, California. I'm in the best real estate in all of LA, living in a place that would probably cost me thousands of dollars for free, for an exchange, a gift of my services for someone else's. And so if we cling to this comfort, to this bubble that we're in, the comfort zone is the nuclear blast zone. That's the only place we are certainly going to die, if we remain in the comfort zone. And when we leave that comfort zone and we truly surrender to what's out there, and to what Terence McKenna called the telos, the purpose that we all have, this Gaian purpose, this celestial ecological niche that each of us has a role to play in this grand cosmic story, this planetary adventure. When we find it, it's all just straight shot. It has been for me. And I think Simon could attest to that too. And he's just been only more and more activated, riding a motorcycle around Colombia, living in the jungle, going on quests to indigenous forest cities, and just living like we're in fucking Lord of the Rings, because we are. The world is ending. We have to do something about it. We have to find our own hero. We have to go on the hero's journey, all of us, to leave behind this society where we're just turning levers and pushing papers, and we have our little bullshit job, and then we come home and we entertain ourselves, or we pretend, or we dream that we're living something of more importance. The world is ending. It's beginning at the same time. And all of us have a part to play in that. All of us. And it's beautiful. It's not scary. It's scary, sure. But it's not scarier than the uncertainty of sitting in traffic, wondering, when am I going to go? When is my fucking heart going to explode? Just from the sheer misery. You know, whenever I go back home and I say goodbye to my old friends, they're always like, they always give me this cheesy look, and they're like, be safe out there. And I'm like, fuck you. I will not. Safety is my fifth priority. I'm fine. I am taken care of by angels. I have friends everywhere. I don't need to look out for myself because other people do, because I trust other people. I give myself to the world. You be careful, motherfucker. Don't get hit. Don't get slammed by a semi-truck on your way to buy Skittles. Don't let your heart explode. Don't drink yourself to death. Don't have a heart attack on your couch watching TV. Or get cancer from eating your fucking poison food, or from your own body just screaming with anxiety every minute, exploding you. You be careful, person of the world, rich person of comfort. Being careful is not going to get us what we want. We have to throw ourselves in wildly.
So I agree with that. Last sentiment, being careful is not going to get us where we want to go. And another way of saying that is, you know, what got us here won't get us there. So like, we can't solve a problem with the same level of thinking that created the problem. Part of what created this problem is maximizing for security, right, and safety. And this sort of, you know, so we saw this a lot during COVID, of putting the individual's kind of safety and, you know, as like the chief sort of value that we're going to optimize for, even though the qualitative thing, right? Like we might have kept, I mean, I'm not saying we did the best job of keeping people alive by locking them down. Probably would have been better to let people breathe fresh air. But the point is like we were trying to just save lives at the cost of human life, like the quality of human life, right? I think that I resonate with this, you know, hero's journey, call to adventure, and it's been a huge part of my story, right? And I'll just share, for whatever it's worth, you know, to you, that part of that journey, part of that hero's journey, it definitely was like obviously leaving the known world. You know, that's kind of by definition what the hero's journey is. You kind of leave the known place, the safe place, and you go into the wilderness or the unknown, the underworld. You're crossing a threshold down into where there be dragons, right? And that's where the transformation happens. That's where the death of the old self happens. Like the hero returns transformed because he's effectively died. You've left this sort of pre-tragic, or whatever you want to call it. You've left this smaller self behind, shed that skin, and in the process of that ordeal, you actually gain a reward. You gain this sort of elixir that is the valuable insight that is for you to sort of bring back to the village, right? So there's a component here where it's like, okay, yeah, go on your journey for sure. And then there's this return journey back. And you know, that's kind of half the story too, is the return, right? It's not all about just going down into the dungeons or into the cave that you fear to enter. It's also about returning with the elixir. And this is kind of my insight from my own sort of wanderings and journeys over the last, I don't know, 6 years or so. Part of my elixir isn't so yes, we need to tell a better story. Yes, the current system is in late stage. We're in late stage capitalism. We're approaching collapse. You know, we're in democracy decay. We're all of the things, right? And yet the elixir for me isn't about just putting on the oorah, let's save the planet, and go to war for the planet, right? Because that's sort of the energy of what I'm hearing. And like I said, what got us here won't get us there. The idea that we're just going to like go fight for it type of thing, right? Maybe they say the path to hell is paved with good intentions. Maybe the fighting for it is kind of what got us here in the first place. And maybe what we need is actually just to fucking fall in love with life, like to fall in love with savoring this planet. And that in itself is the solution. Like that in itself brings you into, a regenerative mindset. It brings you into, getting out into nature and getting into your community and planting things and betting on the future and having children. And all of those things are part of, that process of like coming into this consciousness of like, wow, what a fucking mystery and a miracle that we're here at all, that we're here. That consciousness has woken up to experience itself through me. And I get to, walk around on this earth, and hopefully walk lightly on it and kiss the ground once in a while and be like, wow, what a blessing. And because of that blessing, yes, we should fucking protect it. Yes, we should do whatever we can to orient towards that, beautiful world. I just, it feels to me like the idea that we are, going to come in and save it. First is pathological. The earth is not going anywhere. Like earth's been here for 4 billion years. It's going to keep on spinning, right? As George Carlin said, it might, humans might go somewhere and we might take all these other species with us in an extinction event, and it'd be a huge bummer. But, it's already a bummer, but the planet is the planet, and it's going to continue being the planet, and Gaia is going to continue on, whether Homo sapiens makes it through the filter or not. And yes, I think we could be a way more interesting and beautiful planet if we do make it through the filter, and if we are able to sort of go through this metamorphosis into the kind of superorganism that is sort of the extension of Earth, and it's the mind of the Earth, and potentially the panspermia of life into the universe and seeding the stars. So there's like this beautiful kind of exciting future if we can make it through this test, this filter. But I guess the jury is out on that, and I don't want to like face the end. I don't want to face the end and be like, fuck, I worried all my years away because I was so concerned about like saving the thing. I forgot to stop and smell the roses while they're still there,
I don't think it's about like waging war with the oblivion. It's not about a fight. It's a fight to save ourselves and to bring ourselves out of the slavery and boredom of a life that isn't fully lived. But it's living for it. It's living for the planet fully in everything we do, and making every single moment a treasured act, a sacred recommitment to the planet, to God, to Earth, to us, to what the human being truly is. And it's Martin Luther King said, the saving of our world will come not through the well-adjusted majority, but from the creative maladjustment of a non-conforming minority. And the key word is creative, is that it is a constructive thing that has to be built and organized and developed. And the regens understand this. They're like the hippies before them, rejoicing in casting away all the old systems and structures and the patriarchy and the imperial construct of the nation state and running barefoot through the forests and growing food together and making babies and having a good fuck in a grassy field. Like, that's all great. That's all a part of it. That's all the revolution. And you sort of alluded earlier to, like, you're like, well, we might all go extinct. I would love to see this regenaissance. I would love to see this, utilization of plant medicines and all these sort of healing modalities and this collective sort of rejuvenation and shared, shared, I don't know. It's like it's creating the party that we all want to be a part of. It's creating a life that is itself revolutionary in how radically beautiful it is, not just in how, it positions itself against the old thing and in a way it defines itself based on the old thing, but it's creating a way of life, a mode of production, a means of living, a substrate of existence itself that is regenerative and rejuvenating and beautiful of itself, that is attractive just by itself, that you could take the most curmudgeonly prick who is attached to the ideas of the old world and just drop them for a weekend into this new world, this, Burning Man forever sort of, perpetual regenerative, co-creative, emergent property of a new society, a new humanity, of a world that we collectively design and create, that comes out of our own dreams, that isn't something we begrudgingly participate in because we're going to fucking starve or go homeless if we don't. Something that is truly voluntary, something that we don't just opt into, that we believe in, and something that cares for us. And as the Arhuacos figure it out, oh my God, we work together and systematize a food system. Figure out how to feed everybody. Just get that out of the way. So we're not spending 80% of our energy on meeting our basic needs. We knock that out and figure it out and make it perpetually more efficient. And then 80% of our energy is going toward the dream and toward innovation and creation and to love and joy and family and all those beautiful things. The reasons that we live, that producing things to sell for money is not even a means to an end at this point. It's a means to the end.
Oh,
But yeah, to step into go ahead.
I'm not.
I want to talk about how we structure that and how it actually works, and sort of a blueprint of how we can actually get there. But I'd like you
I
to
just think
reflect.
that there's we riffed on the hero's journey a bit, and there's an important step there that I want to call into consciousness here, which is the atonement with the Father, or the abyss stage. And in this step, the hero must confront and be initiated by whatever holds the ultimate power in their life. In many myths and stories, this is the father, or a father figure, who has life and death power. It is the center point of the journey. So, it's kind of like Luke facing off with Darth Vader, right? And to me, it kind of feels like, as you and I'm guessing, how old are you, by the way?
30,
Yeah, same.
31.
I was going to say we're probably about the same age. So 31, and we're both sort of at this stage in our inflection point in our lives where we're, at least for me, I only speak for my own self, but crossing the 30-year mark, I started thinking a lot more intentionally about the future generations, becoming a father, like actually planting seeds for the future that I want to be part of. And, it's interesting, like you're reminding me a lot of myself, like a lot of energy and passion for, transformation and for the vision of a better world, but also like some what's the right word? Like anger, like some anger for how fucked things currently are. You know what I mean? And sort of like that, almost like a punk sort of angst, or like Rage Against the Machine vibe. You know what I mean? Like, let's, in some sense, like, let's burn this shit down. Like, why do we want to continue perpetuating this broken story, right? And this idea of the atonement with the Father is like really reckoning with the thing. And in this case, it sounds like, if we were to boil it down to a word, it might be money, or whatever, capitalism, the system, whatever you want to call it, like the world eating machine, Moloch. You could give it a million different names, but it's like being initiated by
I
that.
can dip in there. It's what we're capable of. It's system level effects, really. It's the fact that we are capable of anything. That what I was capable of doing when I would drink an entire pint of Maker's Mark whiskey. One night I drank 2 and I woke up and I'd blown the heels off my cowboy boots. How? What I was capable of in those years is what anybody is capable of when they are subject to a system that they don't acknowledge is controlling them. And that's really it. It's not just money. It's not just capitalism. It's the fact that we are a social creature, and that's our genius, and it's our downfall, because we are adaptive. That you put us in an environment, we adapt to it.
So
and we've created an environment and a set of rules that demands we act a certain way, and other people act a certain way, so we act a certain way. And it's the fact that the human being is like this amorphous thing. And I realized this hitchhiking and traveling. I was a different person everywhere I went. I was the place that I was. That we get adapted to one place when that's not really a natural thing for the human being. That's kind of a tangent, evolutionarily speaking, that we are, and we can be anything. And that's the beauty on the other side of that. But yes, I do want to say this. I am pissed off that, children are being massacred right now in Gaza. I'm pissed off that little boys' fingers are digging cobalt out of the ground and inhaling toxic chemicals and drinking poison water in Congo. I am pissed off that everybody that I grew up with that had some spark of genius has fucking smashed it so they can fit into the money machine. I'm pissed off that I seen the best minds of my generation not, destroying their minds in heroin flights or whatever the beat poets were experiencing, but are just smashed into a suit and tie or working in a restaurant at 30 years old. I'm pissed off at that. I'm pissed off because I've seen how good things can be and lived it. And, I could go back to Colombia and just say, fuck the revolution and live a really fun, rambunctious, lovely life. But that wouldn't be as satisfying because it's not just about like fighting back against the bad thing. It's like I get more satisfaction and purpose and joy and love and all the things. And that's what I was kind of saying about savoring, is that when we really commit ourselves to a huge problem, to solving a problem, everything gets richer because of the tragedy, because of the polarity, that it's strung like a lute and we can pluck it and make music out of it.
Love that you brought music in at the end, because I was going to use that exact metaphor. So I'm like I said, we're singing from the same hymn book here in lots of ways. I guess what I'm trying to point to here is that it's that and we're all in different chapters of this journey. So it's not to say one is better than the other. Like even the fully unconscious person chugging the Maker's Mark and, whatever, like we've been there. We've both been there. You and I have both been there. So it's not to judge those humans. We're all in this. And in fact, we're all one, like on a fundamental level. There's really not this, there's no separation on the level of, the quantum mechanical, like the quantum physics realm, or just like when you pay attention sufficiently enough and you can have the illumination and the realization that there's really no separate self, and that what we are really is like a unique expression of the one, and that the light that we all are is shining through each of us uniquely. And without getting like more too esoterical, I'm just saying that this monomyth, this hero's journey, this atonement with the Father it's about reckoning with that old fucked up system, that patriarchy, that, extractive, money machine, whatever it is. It's the reckoning and the realization that you are you because of that. In fact, you get a purpose and a sense of who you are because of this oppositional force, because of the Father, because of the Death Star, because of the fucking thing that's actually, that you're warring against. And so I think part of the evolution of consciousness and that hero on that journey, the evolution of the hero, is it's transcending, it's the atonement, it's moving beyond just the like, I'm here to prove daddy wrong, or I'm here to like show that they're, rage against the machine. And instead,
no, it's
right,
way
I know.
beyond
I'm
that.
not, and I'm
way
not
beyond that.
I'm not,
That's
yeah, I'm not trying to.
It's an important
right.
phrase.
I'm saying like include and transcend and move into the playing of the music, right? Which is just to say like step into your own fucking story and then be like, okay, what story is the most beautiful, interesting story I could be a hero in? And play your music, channel your genius, connect with your people, plant things that you won't ever see, plant seeds that you'll never see fully mature, right? Like what happened to the cathedral builders who started projects that were multi-hundred year projects, right? Like we need that type of consciousness. And I think that that's part of the evolution of what we're going through right now is it's moving into the consciousness of like doing it for the sake of fucking doing it because it's your art. It's your creative expression. Do it because just because, like, it's for beauty. You don't need to do it to fight against some machine. You're just doing it because it's like your jam, you know, and it's the most interesting thing you could do with your time. So that's kind of what was coming up for me when you're, you know, it's kind of balancing these polarities, right? Between the saving and the savoring. Save it because it's so fucking good. You know what I mean? But don't forget to savor the life and, you know, end up in this place of like, fuck, I spent the whole time, you know, stressed and fighting and being a little bit too serious, when it's like, is this serious? You know, like, look around, like, we're on a ball of rock floating around in infinity, and we're, you know what I mean? Like, on some level, there's like this cosmic joke. And so when you zoom out a little bit, it's like you can laugh at yourself and laugh at the whole thing a little bit, and then yet, you know, come back down to earth and walk the walk.
Yeah, I mean, it's fucking hilarious that humanity has pushed itself to the brink of extinction, not only of itself, but almost every other living thing, for like the systematized equivalent of like the ball in the cup game, you know? Like like we are a gambling addict in the Vegas, the purloined sort of blood red neon, you know, Vegas casino of the soul that we have. Red-tailed hawk. Yeah, we are destroying ourselves for a fucking game, for a silly little game. Like, it's ridiculous. It's hilarious. It's just so ludicrous to me that people take it so seriously. And I think that's kind of one of my archetypes as a jester, is to poke fun at this thing, is to laugh at it, is to let people think like how silly we all look. Look at like Bill Hicks is like, look at my furrows of worry. You know, like all these guys in suits that are like super fucking serious. Like, I've got to maximize returns and like blah blah blah. You know, like redirect money into Raytheon. You know, but you know, it's just like, fuck you, man. You're a joke. And I think a lot of these people can't reckon with their own squishy mortality and the fact that they're a little ape on a ball of fire, you know? And on the beautiful side of that, life is beautiful. It's really a beautiful thing. And I was gifted that from a very young age. I was gifted love, true love, and have never been able to tolerate unlove, boredom, you know, sabotaging what is myself. And in growing up and realizing myself is not this guy, not just this little individual, but it's all life in an interconnected web. I simply will not tolerate bombs being dropped on me. I simply will not tolerate dying of diarrhea. That's me dying of diarrhea right now. Millions of people all around the world. I simply will not tolerate it. It's self-defense, you know? It's like if you were in a little cage and like elephants were farting in your face all the time and you're being shot with paintballs, you know, like that's what's happening to us every minute on an exponential scale, you know? And I think it's finding, it's like Terence McKenna says, you know, nature loves courage. It's like nature loves it when you take a risk. It loves it when you throw yourself into the unknown and find that it's a feather bed. And that's kind of a great summation of my experience, that people are always like, you're so serious, you know, you're all this collapse and, you know, climate change and global poverty, all this stuff brings you down. It doesn't bring me down. It brings me up. It gives me energy. It gives me hope. It gives me life to know, like, I don't want to cling to false hope. That's not real hope. I want to let those false hopes die, a miserable death crashing down on the rocks, and let something new be born, you know, to have hope in something real and to have a dream that is bigger than I could ever see it realized, that I'm intoxicated with, I'm in love with. I'm in love with the vision of the world that exists on the other side of all these things that people cling to and they, oh no, we need to, you know, give it up. Let go, and let go of yourself. Let go of this idea that you, this person are, I don't know, somehow gonna have all the answers. I don't know. It's a really liberating process to realize we're not really in control. And this whole thing of free will, like the analog of free markets, it's an illusion, you know? We have a choice in the world. I believe that. But we don't have an unencumbered choice, an uninhibited choice. I asked one of the Arwakos this because they don't believe in freedom. I asked him, like, what is freedom to mean to you? And he laughed. He said, freedom from what? And then he basically explained that, like, everything is connected to everything else. the cells in your body don't just decide to do something, they respond to something else. So we're all responding to something else. And it's this assertion that we have free will and I'm going to freely make choices and I'm in control of my life that makes us unfree in all areas. And when we recognize there are forces acting upon us, the mediums that we interact with, like social media, change our brain. The automobile changes how we interact when we're in it. We would never shout, "Fuck you, piece of shit," if somebody ran too fast in front of us, but we would do it in a flash in a car. And in the same way, money has a tremendous effect on our psychology. It may seem like it's so small, it may seem like it's just a thing, but it's not. And all of these systems and structures and cultural rights and religions affect us profoundly. And in casting them off, to sort of shift a home stretch here into, it's not just a rebellious, willful, fuck you, dad. It's like focusing on money is important because we need money to do stuff in this system. And if we can create a system where we need less money all the time and we are able to produce more benefit and we're able to join our economic destinies together, so where we have our own networks, where we're doing things because we love someone or something and out of trust, or through credit systems or time banking or optionality. Use the word optionality. I think if money's the only way you can meet your needs, you don't have optionality. You have money. And so it's about expanding and exploring these other ways to meet our needs outside of just money, and to create these intercooperative structures that are like a little umbrella, where within that umbrella, we don't need money. Like the community Simon and I were at in Liminal Village, we didn't exchange with each other for XYZ. We did things rotationally. We did things because we love each other. We did things intertrinsically. And it's creating these structures that are more cost effective. So if we create a cooperative that's rooted in a community where we're not charging rent to each other, we're not extracting off of each other, we're not losing energy with each transaction, we're interacting, and we expand that outward and create new threads to new nodes in the network and bring them into it. So we're using our own credit systems, we're gifting, we're sharing, we're not dipping into the dollars, but we're pooling the dollars above us because we need them to live, and using them to invest into the structure. And we're trying to grow horizontally instead of just growing up into one big thing that's competing with everyone else. We can be wealthy beyond our wildest dreams. We can create a system that is more efficient dollar-wise, where we don't need to dip into the dollars. Like Sardex was one of the mutual credit currencies that was created in Sardinia. And because no one had money after the Great Recession, but like Tony is a mechanic who can fix cars. Antonio has a car that's broken, but he doesn't have any money. So Antonio can go to Tony and say, "Hey, I'll get you for this, you get me for that." And suddenly it's economic activity is created. And for every dollar that was spent, or euro, 14 Sardex was spent. So people were able to 14x their optionality or their liquidity in this system by creating their own currency, by creating their own, and not a currency and that's like a token that's issued. It's just a distributed ledger of, I do this for you, you do this for me, we're square. And when you get people doing that, then you get people creating relationships and realizing, okay, actually, I don't need to take tally of all this. I don't need to account for all these things. Then we start to account for things that actually matter. Energy, exergy, the amount of work we can get out of a system, the amount of resources that we have. What are the real problems that we need to account for in our community that we can solve? Account for that. How can we shift from accounting, in this insecure, untrusting way, into accountability? How do we all have greater accountability for the world that we live in? And if we can create these structures and model them that are more fun to live in, that are cheaper, they cost less, they produce better results, yet the food is better, the sex is better, the music is better, people will want to join them. And especially if in a system where more and more people are not able to simply afford the basics of life, and it's getting harder and harder to even be rich. It's even harder for the rich to live in this system, for people to have a way out, a clean way out. That is a beautiful, creative alternative that is itself positioning us to build dual power. Dual power is a term that I think some people ascribe to Vladimir Lenin. I'm not a big fan of Lenin, but I'm a big fan of dual power. Basically, the Soviets in the Soviet Union were workers' councils, directly democratic groups of people coming together to say, we're going to make decisions about how we do this. We're going to produce things together. And they created this massive network all over Russia of people basically meeting their own needs autonomously in a way that's very similar to the anarchists of Spain or to northern Italy. And then the Bolsheviks came in and took over and said, we'll take things for here. And then they created the hierarchical system that became the bureaucracy of the Soviet Union and so on. But this idea that we can build a parallel power structure that runs counter to the existing system, that grows as we create it, that becomes more powerful, that's not like a strike of workers saying, we're going to strike until you pay us more. It's like, bye, bitch. I don't need you anymore because I can meet my needs this other way. That's cheaper, better, faster. And that's all an incubator for open source technology that we're sharing and spreading, that is intrinsically based on getting people out of the grind, helping them activate their ikigai, their purpose, their skill set, become themselves, to actualize and create this exponential growth of innovation and betterment instead of
shittification. I like it, dude. I love the vision. I mean, it is revolutionary. I would say you're not just the archetype of the jester, you're also the rebel. So you're the outlaw, which is, you look like an outlaw. If people are watching this on video, they'll know what I'm talking about. Good looking outlaw though. It's a good look. And I fucking resonate a lot with that. I think that we do need that third attractor, like we've got kind of catastrophes and dystopias up in front, and that's where we're headed as a civilization. And so it's like, what's the third attractor? What's the thing that's going to, life. And complex life, like more interrelating. It's more interrelating, more interbeing, and more complex relationships between people, between our people in place, our environment. Getting back around the fire, getting back under the stars, and getting back to the fucking basics. Like the wisdom's actually ancient. The wisdom's actually old. It's more of a remembering what we forgot, and then integrating that back in with the shiny new tools that we've developed. These monkeys have figured out over the last few thousand years, like the blockchains and the solar power and the energy and all of the different technologies that are going to really unlock our capacity to thrive and flourish in some sort of like game B or alternative story, some sort of new thing that emerges. So I love the vision. Obviously, what's going to get us from here to there is a big question, and unfortunately, it seems a lot like a Hail Mary to me. Not to say that miracles don't happen, but and it kind of has to happen because there's this imperative, like it's kind of a survival imperative at some level. But like put another way, the example you used, right, ended with the Bolsheviks taking over. And so, if we're playing this out, not in a vacuum, but in an actual world where it's multipolar, there's game theory, there's power dynamics, there's Goliath, you know what I mean? There's the Death Star. Like there is the shit that's already there. And so, as you start getting steam and growing and getting the attention of these other powers, that's where things get tricky, because how do you defend yourself against, look at all these beautiful, I'm not just playing Noble Savage here, right? But like, there were some legitimate, beautiful qualities of animistic, Dunbar level societies. There were some beautiful things about those societies that basically just got completely outcompeted because the people who were optimizing for extractive, increasing, optionality tokens, stores of grain, building up a military, et cetera, they just had the force to conquer. And so unfortunately, like the Death Star is the most powerful thing, right? And it's the planet ender, right? So in Star Wars, it's like an apt metaphor. You kind of need that Hail Mary shot to take out the Death Star. Otherwise, like the rebels can't just go find their corner of the universe and do their thing. Like the Death Star will come for you. And so that's the question, is like, it's an inquiry. I don't have any of the answers, but I'm curious, like, what's the way forward? Maybe the Death Star is just in fucking decay and collapse, and that's going to play out, and we'll just pick up from the ashes or something. But I think that it's a beautiful vision. For me, the call has become less about I've got to save the world everywhere and create some sort of solution that scales. And it's more like I just need to plant some seeds in my own life, and I just need to like walk in beauty as much as I can, and like do the, this is just a personal choice, but like as I flourish and thrive, by their works ye shall know them. And so it's like it's up to each one of us to sort of like follow that thread and then find the others. And I think that like magic will happen.
Well, miracles happen every day. Life itself is a miracle. It's more likely that humans can get it together and use all the amazing technology and the natural abundance and healing capacity of Earth to unfuck ourselves than it was for life to begin in the first place, for the Earth to exist as it does in this little Goldilocks zone. But yeah, I think the first step of that is it answers the path that you're talking about as well. That's to step out of the individual pursuit of my wealth, my goals, my this, my apartment, my rent, my whatever, into finding your people and forming a group and working to meet your needs as a group so that it takes less of your energy to meet those basic needs. And this is simple, seems small, but it's really a big one. And it's one of the hardest things to do because we've been trained and conditioned to be and think individualistically in everything we do. And this has paradoxically destroyed the individual. It's destroyed the ability of society to be nurturing enough for people to take risks and to be able to express themselves and to be weird and different because you have to conform. And so it's about starting that process of getting organized. And to beat the Death Star, we have to out-organize them. We have to out-cooperate. We can't out-compete the competitive, war machine, but we can out-cooperate our own extinction. We can create a system that is distributed all over the world, that we have enough people right now, we're just not pooling our resources and utilizing them wisely enough to get the resources flowing into where they need to go, to be able to support people, to get land, to get housing, to get people out of their system, to get them out of their old jobs and into working full-time, building the new. And so that's a question for us all, but I don't think it's as mystifying as people often think. I mean, that would be an entire podcast into itself of asking that question. That's a video I've been meaning to make for a while, just answering that question, the $1 million question. Where do we go from here? How do we get there? Because there are answers and there are people doing it. There are people doing it all over the world in many different facets. And this film, this quest, my work of art, my intrinsically fun and valuable, fuck the outcome. This is fun. I'm doing this. I'm making this film. I'm living my highest self. I'm creating something beautiful that regardless of whether this film comes out and changes the world or pushes people into this direction and creates a wave of communities and cooperatives forming a new economic system, it's fucking fun to make. It's beautiful for me to film butterflies and travel to random places around the world and go to, I'm going to Uganda in 15 days. I'm going to fucking Africa. Some people found me in a meta-crisis group and added me in the World Wide Web group. People from there, Simon talked to people about me, showed them some of my work, and then they were like, we want to give you money to go to Africa to film this gathering of indigenous wizards to unfuck the world. Like, that's awesome. That's better. That's a better movie than you could find on Netflix, So I'm satisfied in that.
Yeah.
I'm full. And as long as I can continue doing this and get more and more resources to do it better and better and to find the others to finish it, just no easy task for me. I think we have a chance. I really do. And I just see so much potential. And I think things get exponentially easier the more people join together and stop trying to figure it out all out on their own and stop asking these $1 million questions. What's the third attractor? What's the new system? What's this? Get together with your fucking friends and the people in your life and work your own way out of the problems that you deal with every day. Your commute, your rent, your job, your this, your that. Figure it out. Figure out what you can do together to leverage your skills to create a communally run cooperative enterprise that's able to produce enough of what it needs, create a pathway to acquire land, lower your costs, make it your goal to make life cheaper all the time until you need less and less and less and less and less money. That's Moneyless Society that we get to before Moneyless Society.
Dude. Money less before moneyless. So yeah, Moneyless Society. That's the name of your YouTube channel, and is that the name of like?
That's a YouTube channel. It's a nonprofit organization. It's a distributed organization, a DAO, a social movement. It's a group of people getting together to do something about it. And if these ideas resound with you, listener, go to hub.moneylesssociety.com, fill out a volunteer form. Our lovely Heather will reach out to you and get to know you on a personal basis in her folksy way and figure out where you could fit in the organization. We're making media. We have a mutual aid project in Appalachia. We are developing several applications. We are starting a direct action coalition to do some fundraising for helping people helping people. We make media. We distribute a fucking lot of memes. We're on all the social media applications, and we're growing all the time. And we need people. I'm going to vocalize my needs here. We need people who are good at nonprofit funding, who are good at helping to resource an organization like that, so that we can start paying people salaries and buying land and getting out of the system and building more and more pieces of the world
Yeah,
we'd
it
like
sounds
to
like
live
you
in.
also need some creatives to finish your film, like to bring it to the finish line, right? Or is that just a funding thing?
Big time. And as crude as it is, well, yeah, I need to find really great artists and editors that I can sit down with and work with comfortably, for a fucking year, who really get the material and the ideas and can edit better than I can. And I need really good people to do what I need to do. It isn't just a money thing, but a big part of it is finding the funds to even the funds to get the funds, and to just keep going, to just keep living my life, because I basically live on support, gifts, donations of the generous people who have, they hear the call of adventure, and maybe they can't go out there and throw themselves into the abyss like I have. Maybe they have kids, maybe they have this, maybe they're working on a different angle, maybe they have a surplus of money that they aren't using right now that they can support a very cost-effective little revolutionary like me to make
Well,
wonderful things
it's
with
a
it.
beautiful vision and mission, and love what you're doing, dude. So yeah, I'll put the links in the show notes.
Thanks, brother.
And just one final note. I know we're wrapping, so one final note is like the base layer underneath this, because money is a story, right? Like at this point, it's not even backed by anything material. It's just a story, and so the idea that like stories, we're storytellers, and story is what moves humans and human energy. And so, it's like we need to tell better stories. And I think you'd be really interested in checking out the story that's coming out of Mark Gaffney, Zach Stein, and sort of cosmoerotic humanism, and the idea that we can create a shared field of value with story, and that there is a story of value based and rooted in first principles that is below and kind of transcends any nationality or religion or currency, and that we can sort of use story as sort of the lubricant, or the thing that can bring velocity to our coordination, and actually create that cooperative revolution that you're talking about. So some people to maybe check out and potentially involve in your film at some point. I don't know. But yeah, man, I'd love to see where this goes. And maybe we can follow it up with a second conversation in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about changing the story, and it's about changing the big story. And that's another attractor, is that there is an amazing journey ahead of us and an amazing destination that, if we can see through all these things that we've been conditioned to think are that's life, or just the way things go, these are the biggest bludgeons keeping away a new future. What is this? Murray Bookchin said, the false assertion that what is must exist is the acid that corrodes all visionary thinking. Things don't have to be this way. Things can be better. And that's the story that I want to tell. But to get there, you have to go through the tragedy. You have to go through the horror. You have to go through the unpleasant conversation that the system itself, our God, is killing us. So I'm on that journey. I'm living and breathing stories every day. And on the podcast as well, that's another way of telling stories. Like, just that's
Yeah.
my thing, is I'm a bard. I'm traveling this world, trying to speak a better world into existence. And
Beautiful.
it's
I love
working.
it. And
It's
since
just taking
I'll
its time.
drop one more quote by Wade Davis, which is pessimism is an indulgence, orthodoxy is the enemy of invention, and despair is an insult to the imagination. So much love, dude. Thanks for being here. Well, congratulations on making it to the end. If you're here, I want to say thank you for your attention, for your time. It's not a trivial thing in 2024. While The world is actively vacuuming up attention everywhere through algorithms and AI and advertising and all the other things. So I just want to say thank you. I'm supposed to also plug if you want to support, blah, 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 if you found this valuable, blah, 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 blah. But honestly, just want to say thank you for your time and attention. And thank you for being a listener and for your curiosity. And with that note, stay curious. Ciao.